So, ASEAN, as you know, is a market of 10 countries. It's developing basically at 3 different speeds. We have the high-income nations, Singapore and Brunei. We have developing countries, Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand, and the Philippines. And we also have a different, another group of companies, the CLMV, which are also developing, but slightly lower income. And the 10 countries in ASEAN, the people within ASEAN, they cannot be any different from each other. In terms of languages, in terms of customs, in terms of race. That, by the way, has been one of the extreme views against ASEAN as a region. But not to be defensive, not to sound defensive, but history has some relevance here. Some would say, in order to move forward, we have to spend a little bit of time to look back. And for me personally, it's an interesting exercise because the way I speak Bahasa is the same with the way they speak Bahasa in Singapore. It's the same they speak Bahasa in Brunei, and also Medan in Indonesia as well. And in fact, if I were in Pampangas, Pampangas is in Luzon, in the Philippines, there are many words in Kapampangan which are similar and have the same meanings as Bahasa. And when I go to Kampong Cham in Cambodia, for example, I see a lot of similar culture in dances, in what they wear, and you know, some of the songs that they sing. So why is that? If we are so different, why am I seeing that, right? So for much of our collective history, I'm just going to go back to this slide. For much of our collective history from the first century until the 13th century, much of ASEAN, or Southeast Asia, has been a successive of one ASEAN dynasty to another. From the Khmer Empire in Funan, Cambodia, in the 1st century, that lasts for some 500 years, and spread out from southern Vietnam to the Malay Peninsula in the west, and then succeeded by the coexistence of the Ayutthaya, of the Champa, the Langsang kingdoms in the north, and then the kingdom of Sriwijaya in the islands, in the South Islands, during the 16th up to the 13th century. That also ruled Sumatra, the Malay Peninsula, and West Java, from Palembang. They were then succeeded by the Majapahit kingdom in the 14th century, and around that time, Temasek, which is now Singapore, was the center of struggle between the Sriwijaya, the Majapahit, and Siam, who were then replaced by the Malacca kingdom. And this is, you know, some of us would remember this in our history class, although I think we need to spend a lot more time digging this back and making sure that the young ones will remember and learn this history a little bit. Just to be clear, and in order not to incur the wrath of some of our historians in here, there have been many, many more kingdoms and many, many more dynasties and empires in between. But suffice to say that we have been living in each other's nerves for quite a while. And except for the Philippines, who were occupied a long time ago, mainly by the mixture of Malays and Indonesians organized in tribal units called barangays for many, many centuries. And then around the 1500, people in Europe developed a taste for spice. And the Portuguese and the Spaniards and the Dutch arrived in droves, followed by the French and the British in the 1800s and the 1900s. See, before the invention of the refrigerators, what we know as refrigerators, and before the Europeans learned how to keep their sheep and cattle alive during the winter month, they had to eat, salted meat. And you don't want to eat salted meat all the time. So in order to make it edible and palatable, they need spices. So we had plenty of that, they had none. That's why they were here. But anyway, history saw China and Viet experience the huge population increases. This is attributed to agricultural innovation and flourishing economies of maritime trade. This is our history. We saw new wealth and new access to commodities as well, We saw a change in consumption pattern, and we saw major commodities being traded extensively in those days in ASEAN. Of course, in textile industries, Chinese and Indian textiles at that point in time are the leading specialists in this area. Anyway, the point that I want to say is this. Our history, our collective memory is one that wanted to bring the people in ASEAN together. It has always been that case. And since we have achieved our independence in the last century, there's no greater effort to bring people together than the one that started back in 1967. And that's why we are here today. 715 years later, today's trade is in ideas and services, underpinned by freer, borderless movement of our people, our products, and hopefully soon, capital as well. I think this question has been answered in several ways in the morning, but let me offer you a few more signposts. What I see in ASEAN is a lost connection. A lost connection between us, among us. But at the same time, I see opportunity with a capital O. If ASEAN were a country today, we would be the biggest palm oil producers in the world. We would be the second biggest producer of rice in the world. We have the third biggest mobile market in the world. We have the fourth biggest trading nation in the world. And we will have the fifth biggest market for automobiles in the world. Excuse me. Our GDP, this has been mentioned before, would be US dollar 2.4 trillion, with 625 million population who have 702 million mobile lines. If we manage to increase ASEAN intra-trade, from 24% of our total trade to 40%, which is the standard that we saw in NAFTA, and increase our investments within this region, the expected incremental impact on our economy in ASEAN will be 2.2 trillion. That's an additional income of 3,500 US dollars per head. And then we have 7 trillion US dollars investment in infrastructure. And of course, infrastructure investment is required. We all know that as well. In order for us to survive, in order for us to flourish, we need to compete cooperatively. Now, there's nothing wrong with competition. It's the order of the day. But for all of us, we need to figure out, especially in ASEAN, how can we compete cooperatively with one another? Because the reality is that our competition is not with each other. Our competition is with those from outside the region. As long as we remember that collectively we need to improve the livelihood of the people within this region. NAFTA, here is basically showing the increase in trade in NAFTA. In 10 years, the intra-trade within NAFTA increased by double. So that's what we wanted to see in AEC as well, in ASEAN as well. With 635 million population owning 702 million mobile lines, the second biggest Facebook users in the world, and face it, we have a very young population. You have to keep up with the hipsters and keep up with the tech, and so does our strategy as well. The global smart monies are investing in our commerce, are investing in our technology and consumer space. Why are we not doing it? Why are we from ASEAN not doing it? Ironically about this, though, is that despite all the efforts by the government, about 40 to 50% of our people in this region, and some of them from the business owners, are not aware about AAC, are not aware about ASEAN Economic Community. I think Professor Kishore mentioned that earlier. As individual countries in this region, we trade more with countries outside of ASEAN than within it. We invest more in countries outside of ASEAN than within it as well. In fact, some of the people in ASEAN are probably more aware and more knowledgeable about London and Paris than the countries in ASEAN. This is despite the fact that the shopping malls, the ones like what we have here in KL, the Pavilion in KL, Paragon in Bangkok, Greenbelt in Manila, and Senayan City in Jakarta look so much alike, despite the fact that. Meanwhile, many FMCGs have been dealing with ASEAN as one market. The consumer markets in Singapore, in Jakarta, Kuala Lumpur, Bangkok, Manila, and Ho Chi Minh have more similarities, especially at the top end of the market than we suspect. They all love Queen Bee. That's Beyonce for the uninitiated. They all love Hermes handbags, iPhone 6, the German cars, and Manchester United Football Club. Boo, right? I got to say it because the Prime Minister loves Manchester United, and my chairman loves Manchester United, but not me. I hate Manchester United. But you know what? They all love that because there's no one from within this region, no companies are meeting their demand. No one, right? 36 million of mass affluent, high net worth, ultra high net worth who love Taylor Swift and K-pop are waiting to be served, but no one is serving it. From this region, somebody else is doing it, right? And when we explore other segments below that, the size of the population balloons. Although local knowledge of the segments will be required, but that is, that's common sense. But anyway, the ambition and inspiration of ASEAN has to start from here, right? You may agree, or you may not agree with ASEAN, as you may agree or may not agree with millennials, as you may agree or not agree with the markets, but it is here. ASEAN will move you and change you in more ways than you know. So the whole point about this is this. We would like to encourage you to be the change. We would like to encourage you to change, to start talking about it and be the change. So basically, ladies and gentlemen, what we want to do is be ASEAN. So therefore, hashtag be ASEAN. So with that, I'd like to pass to Dr. Surin. I want to invite Dr. Surin to come to the stage and close this before we proceed to lunch. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. That was great. Thank you very much, Dato Farid. I thought you were going to be with me, just like the end of the state visit, talking to the media, talking to the people from up here. But I am very pleased that the Maybank is taking this mission very, very seriously. ASEAN has been accused of being an elitist institution. Only diplomats, only leaders, like the Prime Minister said this morning. But we have to take the lead in order to build the house, the architecture. And now it is done. It is time for the people of ASEAN, for those who are waiting for this to be finished, to come in. Join the conversation. Come in and make sure that you can also help do the interior design. You do the furniture, because this house is going to be completed only when the private sector moves in. I think last month, Maybank had this kind of activity with the Stock Exchange of Thailand. Now, Bursa Malaysia, are you taking over all the exchanges in ASEAN? But that's the way to go. Because unless and until the capital institutions, the money institutions, the banks and the financial institutions are confident and convinced and are willing to take risk, this enterprise is not going to be a winning enterprise for everyone. You talk about the EU, you talk about the NAFTA, the drivers were the private sector. Here in ASEAN, the very reason that states are reluctant to open up is because the private sectors are saying, we are not competitive yet. We need more time. We need a lot more preparation. My message is, unless and until you decide to come in, you will have to wait forever. Nobody is going to be ready at the same level. Some will have to take the lead. Some will have to take the risk. And it is what I said to the Prime Minister this morning. It is the work and the responsibility of the governments and the leaders from now on to identify those sectors that are still feeling uncomfortable and not enough confidence. The SMEs, 2 million in Thailand. I don't know how many in Malaysia. I don't know how many in ASEAN. Unless and until they move cross borders into each other's markets, this 25% intra-ASEAN trade is not going to be increased. And that intra-ASEAN trade, growing every year in volume, but percentage-wise, it is stuck. Unless and until the SMEs move cross borders, then we can think about 30% in 2020, 35 in 2025, and let us move to 40 in the year 2030. This has to be your enterprise. And I've been talking to the younger generation that this generation is going to disappear. ASEAN is an enterprise for the younger generation because they will benefit more, because they will have more to contribute. Come in and embellish what has not been done. The time for towering figures of the Suhartos, of the Mahathir, of the Lee Kuan Yews are gone. We have to somehow accommodate to the fact that if you want democracy, there will be changes. If you want participation, there will be people's agenda everywhere in all 10 of us. So there will be this, you call disruptive evolution of leadership in each of the country. Yes, that has to be factored in. But with that instability, relative instability of leadership, of discontinuity among us, we, the people, the private sector, will have to make sure that we have a role to play and we play it well. That's the first message. Come in and do the job. And this big gap between us, unless there is investment, unless there is connectivity, unless there transfer of technology, transfer of experiences, development of human resources. I have talked to many of those countries on the mainland, Mekong River Basin, yesterday as a matter of fact, that you have to speak the language of the market. Don't expect donation from big countries anymore, not from those countries that used to give roads, used to build ports, those used to build airports. No longer. Don't despise profit, because that's what drives investors coming onto the landscape of ASEAN. So talk the language. I said, learn to speak the language of the market. Don't just think that they will come in and do this job as a charity. So you have to transfer the experiences. You have to help develop the human resources. You have to also help them connect physically, institutionally, rules, regulations. You have done it. We have done it, many of us. But we have to convince them and we have to share with them that only by having norms and regulations that are conforming more and more with the rest of the world, we can become that magnet attracting all this attention, all this investment, real investment, long-term investment on our landscape. 140 billion US dollars coming into ASEAN every year. And it will be 150, 160 into the future. 70% of that goes into the service sector. What does that mean? No longer manufacturing, no longer just industrialization, but service sector. It means this expanding middle class, this rising purchasing power, this large pool of consumers are expecting a better quality of life. And that's opportunities for a lot of the companies out here on the landscape and from outside. Education, health, entertainment, these kind of logistics, finance, banking, insurance, all these things are needed for ASEAN to achieve what we have set out to achieve. It is possible within our reach, but the leaders have done their job. The diplomats have completed their mission. From now on, they will give support, they will give encouragement, they will listen to you what you want, but you will have to take that risk forward. About this gap again, about this reluctance again, about this reservation again, about this not willing to open up and raising non-tariff barriers again. Dato', I have found out that those who are in the middle, Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, the Philippines, are more reluctant to open up than the new countries of ASEAN. Precisely because you have industries and sectors to protect. Precisely because we have to talk to their lobbyists. Those new countries do not have much to protect. That's why I came up with this idea. Governments will have to turn their attention to these industries and sectors that are still feeling uncomfortable and feeling exposed and unprepared. You cannot wait until you are fully prepared. You have to take risk. And that risk has also to be shared by governments, and yes, by Maybank too. You have to open up facilities. You have to open up windows. These are for SMEs from Malaysia. These are SMEs from Thailand. These are for SMEs from Indonesia. Move cross borders. Help build ASEAN. Without their confidence and their movement, and don't let them fall on their bottom alone. Give them some help. Give them some facility that would help. By being SMEs, meaning they don't have the information, they don't have the technology, they don't have the capital. And we are saying, move, move, move. And they said, who are helping us? Why let us fall down on our face by ourselves alone? I have this much capital reserve. I can't use it all just to move and explore the market. Banks will have to do it. Financial institutions will have to do it. Governments will have to do it. Only then we can have a strong movement, or what the Prime Minister said, unleash this force of creativity of ASEAN, of 600 million people, of 2.5, 2.4 trillion combined GDP, of 2.5, 2.6 trillion trade that we have. Only then can we see the reality of the efforts that we have been working since 1967. So I'm pleading with you all, here, every capital, that the ball now is in your court. Do something with it. Time for waiting is no longer here with us. Time to get involved, roll up your sleeves, get your hands dirty on the ground, and we will see the profits, we will see the benefits, we will see the growth of ASEAN entire. Thank you very much.